Good afternoon and welcome to KVEC SERTAC, the Autism Hour with Miss Kim Howard from the Kentucky Autism Training Center. And thank you for being here.
All right. Hello, guys. So we're going to talk about school day transitions. This kind of came about. I've been in a bunch of classrooms this year, not every day, but several days a week, in and out of a variety of classroom across all ages. And one of the common difficulties that I see for our students with autism is being able to get them to transition from activity to activity across the school day. So we're going to talk about why that can be a struggle for them and what we can do to support that. Okay, so what we know, transitions are hard. We know that transitions are hard. We know that transitions are hard, and we know that even worse, that unexpected transitions or transitions that feel rushed are exponentially harder for our students with autism. And so we need to avoid rushing if at all possible, and we need to avoid rushing them. So we're going to talk about some strategies for that. I know that's not always possible. I had a teacher tell me every time I rush him, suddenly he becomes like molasses. It's like trying to push molasses uphill. And I think that was a pretty accurate description for this student. So why is this a struggle for our friends with autism? So why is this such a struggle? So they have a strong need for insistence on routine. They need things to happen the same way every time. And if we are smart, one of the evidence-based practices that we can build on is routine. And routines are the things that we do every day. So a routine is how we arrive to school. A routine is how we switch from class to class. A routine could be how we line up. We will build in very strong routines. They have a need for predictability. So they need to know, when are things happening? Why are things happening? How are they going to happen? And they need them to be consistent both across places and people, which can be hard when they are working with multiple people. Sometimes our students who have autism or autism-like issues get hyper-focused. It's called monotropic focus is the fancy word for that. But they get super focused on one small element of the day and they're sucked in intensely to that moment. So, or intensely focused on one specific subject or intensely focused on what they are doing in that moment, that being able to get them to shift off of that can be very difficult. It's like trying to pull apart two Legos that are stuck together. If you've ever had that experience, they actually make a little they make a little primer you can use. As a mom of a person who used to love Legos, it can be really hard to get those little bricks apart. And when you've got a person who has autism who's hyper focused on something, it's like trying to pull those blocks that are stuck apart to get them to move on from what they were focused on. Maybe it's sensory overload that they are needing to move to a new setting, a new place. That new place might be too bright, too loud. Their people are bumping into them, they're touching them unexpectedly, and so the actual process of physically moving is putting them into sensory overload. We get students who have executive functioning challenges. Think about all of the components, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute more deeper. All of the pieces that go into executive functioning. Um, Students have anxiety and fear of the unknown. So if they don't know what the schedule is, and we haven't told them what the schedule is, it can be distressful. Think about this. If you got up today and you had no idea what your day was going to entail, and somebody else was in control of your day, and you didn't have any control or say over it, someone else was going to tell you what to do all day, and you did not know what that day would look like, how would that make you feel? For me, it would cause me a lot of anxiety because my husband says I'm a control freak, and apparently that is pretty true. And probably a lot of us are, right? So, um, We need to know what's happening, and that's a normal human thing, right? And many of our students in gen ed setting or in a variety of settings in school, they can go with the flow and they catch on pretty quickly by watching the other kids and they catch on to those school routines. But for a chunk of our students that have autism or autism-like issues, they're going to need a direct schedule and they're going to need some other supports. And we're going to talk about those. Maybe it's a communication barrier, meaning maybe they're struggling to understand a verbal warning, and we'll talk about what a verbal warning is. Or maybe they are expressing their frustrations with transitions in a socially inappropriate way, or a socially appropriate way. They're saying, "I don't want to go. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing right now. I'm really enjoying this class, and maybe I don't like the next class, or I don't feel motivated to go to the next class. Maybe I clash with that teacher, or maybe I just physically feel tired and I'm done with today. And I don't have great social skills to communicate that well." So there can be lots of different reasons for the struggle of transitions, and these are just some of them. Okay, so we're going to deep dive a little bit into executive functioning skills because this can play a huge role into why transitioning is problematic. And I don't think that we as educators sometimes realize the importance of prepping our kids and providing them with scaffolding and supports during transitions. And that's what I have seen across the state when we have kids who are failing to move smoothly across the school day. So cognitive flexibility is being able to shift attention. And so when we struggle with cognitive flexibility, it's the ability to transition mentally and physically from one subject, one teacher, one classroom expectation. So even just the rules of the classroom. Math class rules are different from science class rules, gym class rules, the lunchroom rules. Everywhere you go, the rules are just slightly different. And that's not necessarily wrong, but it's hard cognitively when you already are struggling with so many other things. And then you get stuck. So, working memory, being able to remember, bringing the right notebook, finding the new classroom, and then recalling the instructions for the upcoming class period. Yesterday, the teacher told me to bring a notebook and my science book. And what else was I supposed to bring to this class? Oh, I don't know. Or maybe the kids aren't even shifting from class to class. Maybe it's elementary school and they're just needing to get the notebook out. And the teacher has said, put away your materials and get out XYZ. It's being able to remember XYZ. It's being able to remember those specific things. And when it was said verbally. Organizing and planning. So it's managing the physical materials, which also comes back to working memory. So managing binders, folders, lockers, pulling things in and out of your desk, and planning which materials are needed at the right time. It's time management, being able to navigate the school building, use the restroom, arrive before the bell rings, for students who are out there going from classroom to classroom. And for our kids that are staying within the right staying within the same classroom, it's being able not to get sucked into that desk. When they look inside of their desk, they look in there, they're looking for the two or three items that the teacher has said, but there's 100 other things to distract them. So they have to be able to keep their attention on the right topic. And that can be a huge struggle. It's also that comes back to inhibition control or self-control, stopping in the hallway, ignoring distractions, being able to move forward to the next classroom and manage emotions. So same thing if you're in a self-contained classroom. Inhibition control is when you look in your desk or you're looking for the right items, or inhibition control is being able to give up what the activity that you're currently doing and moving on to the next one. Task initiation is actually getting started on the new work, and opening the right materials when you sit down. and getting started on this new material after you've gone through the stressful move. Even if you're staying in the same classroom now, you've actually gotten the right things out, but now you need to get started on the next class. Metacognition, or self-monitoring. Metacognition is thinking skills. It's checking in with oneself. Do I have everything that I need right now? Do I have all the right materials and supplies? So it's kind of checking up with yourself to say, do I have everything that I need for this class? Okay, so what do? We know transitions are hard. And for some of our kids, it does feel like trying to move molasses uphill. When the teacher said that to me, I was like, that's the best description I've ever heard. Getting kids to move from an activity to an activity, sometimes it does feel like moving molasses uphill or herding cats. Take your pick. Okay, so one of the best things that you can do is prepare for changes in advance. So prepare for changes in advance. So you can give something that I like to call fair warning. So fair warning is literally, it could be a verbal statement or it can be like that number two. That number two is actually a visual image printed out from Google, like Google Images. You can print it out however, you can draw that on an index card. In my classroom, I do this in my Sunday school classroom. It's just a good strategy. I'll tell kids, hey guys, in 2 minutes, we are moving on to the next thing. It gives them time to mentally prepare for that cognitive shift of moving on to the next activity before I'm actually asking them to move on. They can start wrapping up in their mind, start finishing whatever they're doing. For many of our kids, they're going to need more than that verbal warning, more than me just saying, all right, guys, 2 minutes. I might use something like that number two, the actual physical picture of a number two to represent 2 minutes. It could be a countdown timer. On the screen, you're going to see a time timer in which the red disappears. So kids don't actually need to be able to tell time, or it could be a visual countdown board. I could count down the minutes by pulling off the tabs, or I could use that to count down activities. We're going to do one activity, two activities, and then we're going to be done. You can use those in a variety of ways, but we're giving kids advanced warning of we're about to shift. It's critically important for especially when kids are engaged in tasks that they highly love. If I'm about to pull a child off of an activity that they're super enjoying and I need to shift them onto another activity, then I'm going to give them fair warning and say we're about to move on. Maybe I'm using an hourglass timer, and this is really convenient because I can put it right on their desk. If it's a child that will not flip it over, that's just going to depend on the kid. Maybe I'm given an auditory signal. I was in a classroom the other day that used a novel. She had like a kazoo that kind of gave that kazoo sound. I cannot make the sound, so I won't try it. She gave the kazoo sound and did a really nice job. She did the kazoo sound, got everybody's attention, gave the 2 minute warning, and said, hey guys, in 2 minutes, we're going to shift to our next activity. She told them what the next activity was. And then she gave them the 2 minutes. And then she gave the novel sound, which was the kazoo again. And the kids then transitioned and cleaned up. This was in an MSD classroom. I have seen this be used in gen ed as well. So I think there is some pretty good practice there for that. And it doesn't have to be a kazoo. You can use whatever novel sound works best for you. Um, Maybe it's the cleanup song. I see the cleanup song be used as a transition activity in a lot of preschool, even some kindergarten or first grade classrooms. I won't sing this for you either. No one deserves that level of torture at this point in the day. But it can be a great activity to use. So just thinking through what kind of an auditory signal could we use? A visual schedule uh, is another great tool to use for our students to know what's happening, what's coming next. It will help build in your predictability. Not only do you need to have it, but you actually have to use it. I go in a lot of classrooms and teachers have these up on the wall, and I can tell they're never used. They're clean and they're pristine and they have all the pieces, and they look beautiful. but they are collecting dust. And the ones that are covered in Cheetos and snot, those are the ones that are actually being used, and that's wonderful. So make sure that not only do you have them, but you're actually using them with students. Um, for kids with autism, this is a baseline antecedent-based intervention that has a ton of research behind it. My rule of thumb is if you have a child who does not transition from activity to activity independently, then they need some kind of visual schedule. It's critical mass. So why have a visual schedule? It's an easy way to provide students with consistent cues about their daily life. It's going to help them anticipate what will happen next. It reduces anxiety and it's research based to reduce behavior problems, guys. And we use visual schedules every day of our lives as an adult. As a functional adult, we're using visual schedules. Um, we use a visual schedule all the time to help us get to the places that we need to go. So when we're teaching a visual schedule, we're teaching them a lifelong skill. So this is worth our time and effort. It has to be individualized. Um, this could be whole class, and we'll talk about some options, a little bit of options for that. This could be a personal, a one-on-one schedule. You're going to think about how long is the schedule, meaning is this a whole day schedule? Is this just a partial schedule, morning and afternoon? For some students, they can only handle knowing one or two activities that are coming up. And so you're going to think about where is this student at and how will they benefit most? Is it stationary or portable? Meaning, is the student in one location most of the day? Then they probably can just use a stationary schedule, meaning it's going to be up on the wall or be somewhere within one classroom. Or is this a student who's going across all around the school, in which case it needs to be portable, something that the student can take with them? Who is responsible for maintaining that schedule? And it needs to be an adult. In my classroom, we zoned students, meaning that across the day, I was responsible for certain students, my assistants were responsible for certain students, and we traded out across the day. During that time, whoever was the two or three or four students that I was taking care of, I made sure that their schedules were up to date, that they were checking their schedules. I made sure of certain things, and the schedules, maintaining those schedules was on the list of that adult. And does it meet the current needs of the student? Were they a student who only read pictures, but now they're reading? Well, then I need to add some words. Or are they a student who reads really well? Then their schedule might just be words, and that's even better. So schedules can look like a ton of different things. Some students are going to start out at object schedules. That is one of the most difficult ones, only because we're trying to figure out what objects to use. What I have found with object schedules is once you pick your object, stick with it. Whatever objects you decide to go with, actually stick with them, and then that will represent for your student. Picture schedules, written schedules, all of those are there. This is a really good slide to just kind of help us think through how we might actually use and build a schedule. Okay, schedules can look like all kinds of things. So I want you to look at the schedule in the middle, which is the larger schedule on kind of that metal cabinet. It has blue and green around it. That is actually a whole class schedule, but the teacher made it into individual schedule. We took their pictures off. She took a whole class schedule, and she had a few students who needed an individual schedule. And what she did was she took their pictures and put them on magnets. That cabinet is about waist height on me. It's probably about 2.5 or 3 foot high. And so she put their pictures on it, and she had them move their pictures down across the day. And we took their photos off. Obviously, we couldn't share their photos with you, but we left the red magnet on to represent that. So I thought that was a unique way to get both whole class and individual schedule. There is an object schedule on here. At the top on the dry erase board, there is an individual schedule that also allows for more intense directions. And then there is a written schedule. So Visual schedules can look like a ton of different things. They are very much individualized. And my only rule of thumb is that they work for the student and you actually use them. The student uses them. That's my only rule of thumb is that the kid really uses them. They can't just be on the wall looking pretty and then nobody ever refers to them. They should be using them every day, all the time. And if it's not natural flow part of the day, then you have to rethink your schedule. It's not working. If they're all up on the wall, all together, all pretty, but they're just sitting there collecting dust, then that's not functional and it's not working. We have to rethink that piece of it. So before you introduce the schedule, know what you're using, gather up all your materials, and decide where it's going to be located at. Um, you want to model that for the student. In the beginning, you want to kind of limit your verbal directions because the purpose of a schedule is to facilitate independence eventually. You want this to kind of guide that student, and the goal being that it's going to help them through transitioning throughout their day. So try to limit words. In the beginning, you might not be able to do that as much, but the goal of a schedule is for that child to be able to do it independently. So think that long term. In the very beginning, for a lot of our kids, they're not there yet. So obviously, you're going to have an adult with them. But limit verbal prompts because verbal prompts are harder to fade out than any other. Okay. So know that. When you're introduced the schedule to the child, I will say, I know we're at the end of the school year. I'm thinking for the beginning of the school year next year or at the end of the school year this year, if you have a student that you've never done a schedule with, or a student that you've tried to do a schedule with and it failed epically, especially for our students who are autism level 3 or students who fall into extensive support needs, regardless of disability. A lot of times when I'm introducing them to a schedule, I put things on the schedule that they already do. One of the scariest things for me as a teacher when I was first putting schedules into my classroom was one of the scariest things for me was I realized that a few of my students only did one or two things all day. It was a reality check for me because especially my students who had physical disabilities, I taught in an MSD classroom many, many years ago. I was introducing a schedule. I was like, okay, what do they do? When I looked at their day, I was like, oh my God, I need to add more things to their day. Their day is not robust. And it was a reality check for me. And it may be for you too. When you look at their day, start with the things that they do. For your really physically aggressive kids, for your kids that interfering with their day may cause physical aggression, I tell people to introduce that schedule as full of reinforcers. So especially those first few days when I'm introducing it, and then very gradually build in the things that you want them to do. So what I mean is if they currently do the iPad, they do the computer, they do Legos, and they go to the playground, well, then put those things on the schedule. Put it on the schedule on their time and have them check the schedule on as they do those things naturally. Do not change their current schedule, right? And then slowly add in small amounts, a few minutes of other things that you need them to do so that you're gradually building in and changing those pieces. And then give them lots of reinforcement for when they do other things that you need and want them to do and make it slow because the goal is to ensure success. And for some of our students, we start with where they're at and we don't want to stay there forever. And we're just talking about, small amounts of times, a few weeks, maybe a little longer, depending on them and their needs, but we're introducing that to them and providing lots of positive reinforcement. Okay. So I sent my kids for that were in my classroom. I used a name card. I would say check your schedule. I didn't say check your schedule to them. I had them name match. A goal for many of my students was to be able to read and match their name. So their schedule had their name on it, and it was up in their like their work area. I didn't have all my kids' schedule like up on the wall together like a lot of people do. I had their schedules in their work area to where they were going to routinely because I wanted it to be a place that they went to all the time. So it'd be easy for all of us to remember to make them check that, to be sure that they were utilizing that schedule in the beginning until it became a habit. So one of the things that we did was we sent them to check their schedule with their name card. And so they knew if I handed them their name card, they needed to take that to their schedule, match it, and then check their schedule. So things to think about is balance of activities. Um, are you providing enough work? Are you providing enough reinforcers? Do you have enough adults available? What's your child's attention span? So thinking about balancing. If you have a student whose attention span is 2 or 3 minutes, then they're going to have a lot more activities on their schedule than students who are able to go and sit for 20, 30 minutes. So it's going to look different for every student. A child's level of alertness. If I have a student who comes in and I know that they are going to come in and they take medication and they're going to need time in the morning because they are going to come in not awake, then I'm not going to put heavy academic work on their schedule in the morning. I'm going to save that for when they're awake. Or the opposite. Maybe they come in and the morning is the time to hit those academics really hard. Then I'm going to hit those academics hard and I'm going to save the less academic things for when they're less alert. And just thinking through those things. Build in reinforcing activities to the schedule. Make sure that there are fun things happening on your schedule. Do it as a surprise sometimes. Do it at the end of the year when the schedule is chaos anyways, and it's not going to harm anyone. Build in fun, guys, because you're teaching the schedule and you're teaching them a lifelong skill. And think about the timing of your activities. What's too long? What's too short? How long can you hold their attention span? Um, and and it's some trial and error with this. And it's okay to kind of play around with it and see what works best. So think about what kind of schedules do you already have in your classroom? Do your students actually use them? Are they really using them? And are they a schedule that they could use independently eventually? What's already working and what do you need to change or improve, especially at this point in the school year? We're in March. Think through that, especially when you're thinking about every year that I was in the classroom, kind of towards that end of the year point, I would start thinking about what do I need to change for next year? Think through these pieces, especially for your schedule. To me, it is a critical mass piece that if I could make it a law, I would. If I could make this a law, I would make it a law. Okay, electronic options. If you have students that are out there in gen ed, that are doing lots of projects and that are probably functioning really independently, maybe it doesn't need to be a paper or a picture-based schedule. Maybe they need some electronic options. This is a free option. It's called Through Day. I have to say that slowly because, anyways, it's called throughday.com. It is free and it's actually from a person who is autistic as well. So just know that this is out there. There are other electronic options. You could use the visual calendar inside of an iPhone or inside of an iPad. You could use the electronic calendar inside of um, I'm going to say, I don't know if Chromebook has one, but I feel like it should. But there are many options. So think about how are we helping kids keep track of what they should be doing? Even our students who are gen ed based, how are we supporting them? Especially since we've gone away from things like actual physical planners in many schools. And our students, especially our students, are going to need those level of support for long-term planning. Okay, communicate clearly and offer choice when appropriate. So use simple, direct language and visual support. At the end of this, there are a couple of websites that have free visual prompts. So like the visual cue cards, and I'm going to show some pictures of those in a little bit, I think. But using that simple, direct language, we are about to, we need to stop what we're doing. We need to go to this next activity, direct language and visual supports to help kids get to the next activity. Positively reinforce behaviors that you want to see again. Great job. I loved how you put your, how you stop that activity right away when I ask you. Great job. I love that. High five or whatever positively reinforces that. Maybe that's a sticker, maybe that's a piece of candy. Um, so maybe it's a pause button. I have had students that I love a pause button. We have had to pause an activity and so you can use the pause button. I've printed that out from Google Images. We pause an activity where I have a student that we supported in the last few years that he was in kindergarten and he had their schedule was a little bit awkward in that in the middle of center time, they had to stop centers and transition to lunch and then come back to centers. And so he needed to be up there and he did really good in centers. And he used his visual schedule and he could transition from center to center. But when it was time to go from centers to lunch, even though it was on his schedule, he wasn't finished with that center and he felt like he could not leave it incomplete. And so he would cry and it would end up being unfortunate experience. And so we used the pause button to pause the center so that he could leave that activity, go to lunch, and then come back to it and he could unpause it. So we printed him out a physical button to pause it because kids recognize pause, right? So I like visual cues. Visual supports are a huge help for our students. Environmental planning, thinking through the environment where kids are at, minimize waiting, use of transition objects and all done buttons. So all done bucket. A transition object might be something for them to hold in their hand. Maybe it's a fidget. Some kiddos need something in their hand to transition with. They're going to need some sort of fidget. Waiting is very hard when we're transitioning. So planning that out well, and I know we don't always have control of that. In my classroom, I kept a wait basket. If I had kids that were having to wait and it was for longer than what we anticipated, then I had a basket of activities that they could do during that time, and it was only available while they were waiting. We kept a bucket of transition objects, and it was primarily fidgets, so that it was just something quick that they could grab, take in their hand, and walk down the hallway with, or move to the next center with if they needed to take it to the center. And it was usually little fidget items like that. An all done bucket is basically like that little picture that you see, and it is a place to put items when they are finished. So it's a way to get kids to kind of give things up. You're teaching them, it's the same concept as a finished bucket if you're familiar with Teach. So it's a way to get kids to finish items. They can be finished for now. So we're placing them in this bucket. They can get it back later, but for right now, we're about to do this next activity. So we're going to finish it for now, and you can come back to it later. This is, and I'm actually going to show you a couple of resources. So we were talking about cue cards for visual images. This is from a website called Victories, the letter N Autism. And it's from a mom in Canada, and it is all free. They have a ton of different behavior cue cards. And everything that you'll find on this website is free, and you can print and download. They have hands down, they have wait, they have walk. So if we're trying to get kids to transition to the next activity, maybe they need a cue for walk, maybe they need one for line up. Um, Many different. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit because they have a larger size. These larger size cards are about 3 by 3. So if you have students that have a visual impairment or younger students that need just a slightly bigger image, these can be very helpful as well. So I really like the behavior cue cards as well. And then let me share one more place that is great for free resources. Okay, so this is Ocali. It's Ocali Grab and Go Resource Center. Everything that you find here is free as well. It's out of Ohio. They have a ton of free resources as well. What you will find here are what you will find here are behavior contingency maps. So if you are working on getting kids to transition, then you can look at their behavior contingency maps. Here is the map to get what you would like. They have choice boards and breathing cards. They have first then boards. If you have students that are not quite at the level of a schedule, maybe they're at the point of you're looking at more of a first then. Maybe we're thinking something along those lines. I like a good first then for that. They have incredible 5-point scale. They have token economies if you are looking at positive reinforcement. And they have a ton of what to do cards. So these are just, here is a check your schedule example. They have a ton of, if you don't have access to something like Board Maker or lesson picks and you need graphics to make a schedule, they have some options here. So here are some different ones. So, and these are all freebies. So I will say um, transitions can be a struggle. What I do think that is important to do is to establish a routine and consistency with our kids. Make sure that you're doing it the same way if possible and setting up some way that it's predictable, um, a predictable pattern of behavior for our students so that they know what's coming and they know what to expect. That visual schedule is going to help you do that. And it's going to help you be consistent across people because it's going to remind them as well when you're working with classroom assistants or kids are going to other classrooms. One of the things that I have suggested is if you're sharing students across, maybe you are in maybe you're out in gen ed world and you're the special ed support teacher and you know you have a student they're in the third grade and they see these two or three teachers. Maybe you guys can have a conversation about the rules and maybe there can be some conversation about setting up transitions the same way. So when class ends and it's time to go to the next class, all of those classes are doing it the same way so that there's some consistency there. I have seen that be very successful for our kids, not just kids with autism, but kids who have executive functioning issues, kids who have ADHD issues, kids who have anxiety, kids who fall out on that kind of neurodiverse end of things, or just kids who need some serious structure to function in the school day. So thinking through some of those pieces of it, how can we help school be more predictable and more consistent? How can we kind of bridge the gap to lessen the chaos for some of our students who do not thrive well when they don't know what's going to happen next?
Thank you for your presentation, like you were saying on the schedules and transition and the I like the transition cues and I love the way, like you said, the songs that some of our little ones sing as they're cleaning up or stuff like that, preparing for transition. It's really awesome. I think one thing too is if our kiddos go outside of the classroom, do those hallway reminders, those expectation reminders and things like that when they're exiting the room. And I mean, it don't take what, couple of 10 seconds to say, hands to yourself quietly, right hand side of the hall. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it and stuff like that. So
Yeah, exactly. Here's what we're about to do right now. Here are the rules. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
100%, Doug. That's great.
And I love the way you said behavior specific praise as well. Let them know what they're getting a good job or attaboy or great
Yeah,
job, because if they don't know what you're praising them for, they don't know what behavior to repeat. So
they
that's
don't
a
know.
very good point too. As well, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, Doug.
This is Miss Kim Howard, and thank you again, Miss Kim, for uh, being here with us this year and providing these opportunities. And these have all been recorded, so they will be up on the KVEC SERTAC, the holler.org. And so please visit those for other additional PD opportunities. And thank you.